Welcome, everyone, to the Jake Dunlap Show. This is your weekly dose of real success stories from entrepreneurs, athletes, celebrities, CEOs, and the people that you love. If you've ever wondered what makes people tick, what are the weird things that happened to them in their past that help to shape the people that they've became, every Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern, you can tune in and get exactly that. The behind the scenes, not the typical behind the scenes, but the real stories that shaped some of the people that you know, love, and follow. All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. Today's conversation is going to be a fun one because not only we're going to talk about business, we're going to talk about growing and scaling. We're going to talk about growing up internationally and making the move to the US. We're going to talk about health, wellness, and really what it takes to be successful today when you're running a company. Today's guest is a man whose drive comes from the idea that everyone has to create something in their life. According to him, 90% of your success is guaranteed if you create out of passion and don't use money or recognition as the incentive for the journey you embark on, which I agree 1000% with. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ph.D. as well too. I forgot that part. Mr. Asaf Darash. Asaf, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a good one, man. And so again, you've got the technical side. You've done a lot of different things in your life. And so I think it's going to be fun to kind of talk a little bit about your journey and your path. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the early memories you have around, entrepreneurship, business. I know born in Jerusalem, spent a lot of your time in Australia, which I'm sure was a lot of different things that were happening. So talk a little bit about the kind of the early days of your, your upbringing, and what are some of the big memories that stand out during those times?
Sure. So, like I was born in Israel, but I grew up in Australia. Basically from a very early age, when I was little, like computers were not everywhere, but I was really interested in computers. It seemed like magic to me. And we'll talk about in a second about why it's magic. I still think today that it's magic, right? Like it's amazing. You know what? Let's start with that. You think of it like this. An architect wants to design a building, okay? He designs the building, but now someone needs to go out and build the building, right? A programmer thinks of a program, designs it, writes it down, and it exists. It's an actually working machine. It's like magic. It really is. So that really fascinated me from the age of 7 or 8. And I was always drawn to computers, always drawn to programming. I had...
what was the first language you learned?
First Basic. It was called Basic.
Oh, that's how you know you're an OG. Just so you guys know, if you want to check someone's street cred who claims to be a good developer, ask them if they know how to write in BASIC, because that means, man, for those of you who don't know, we'll do a link to the show notes so you guys can actually understand what we're talking about. But all right, so that's respect there. You got that's mad respect there.
Yeah. And I think the funniest story was that when I was about 10, I got my first computer, and it was like a big deal, right?
Oh yeah,
like this huge box with the screens that are only green, right? And after about a month that I was programming with the computer, my father comes back home, and I tell him, Dad, we have a problem. And he's like, what's the problem? The computer's not working anymore. He's like, why isn't it working anymore? And he comes into my room, and I totally disassembled the computer because I want to understand how it works. I'm a 10-year-old boy, right? So that's the type of things that I was doing as a child. Like I was playing with computers all the time. I was really fascinated about it. And then I actually started off not learning computer science. I started off with economics and political science.
What drew you to that?
Because I was very interested.
Yeah, what was it about that, like those arenas?
I was always interested in economics. I was always interested in the dynamics of microeconomics and how basically you're creating a functional system. When you think of it, like nobody's actually monitoring it. Everybody's doing their thing, and it's just happening, right? So that really, really interested me. So I decided to go learn economics.
Okay.
Now, when I was learning economics, It was the beginning of the first tech bubble. And that's when I said, wait a second, these two things that I love connect.
Right. And were you at Berkeley at the time too? Is this when you're at Berkeley?
No. That's when I was actually my bachelor's degree is from the Hebrew University, and then I moved to Berkeley when I did my Ph.D. And then I started actually learning linguistics. And then in my PhD, everything connected, because in my PhD, I researched how computer languages and computer networks actually create human action, how they control human action, or how basically one of the basic ideas in linguistics is the words that you have are control what you can think. Okay, for example, if there's like a very famous thing that there's a certain tribe that does not have the word I in the language. Okay, the word that they don't have that in the language. So all their functions, everything that they do is very community based. Okay, so in the same way, when you have specific computer languages, they create a certain type of action that the programmers will create by the very definition that's how the language is structured. So then when I did my PhD, I wanted to connect linguistics, computer languages, and economics all together. I started working on my PhD. I got a Fulbright scholarship. We moved to the US, to Berkeley. There I met people that I have no other way of saying it blew my mind. There I also changed my mentor to a mentor from artificial intelligence from MIT. So I was like going to Boston here and there to meet him and coming back to Berkeley. Made sure not to go to Boston in the winter because that's really bad. And there basically I came up with the idea of Regpak, which is my company today. What happened is we started working, and I won't go into it because it's very technical, right? But basically one of the biggest problems of computers is what's called the private language problem. Okay? The private language problem is that in order to create a computer or to create a software, you have to use a lot of other softwares or a lot of other hardware.
Right.
Okay? Right? Like I can't create it in a void. But the problem with computers is because, like we said, it's a bit like magic. I can create something that has its own private language that works independently of everything else. And now, in order to, let's say I have an application that tells you the stock prices. Now, in order to use it, you need to speak my language.
Right.
Right? Now, we've created the whole idea of APIs and all that, which basically try to mitigate the
translator sometimes.
Yeah, it's like translators. All the APIs are like little translators, right? So when we were working on that, we said, okay, can you actually create a software that doesn't have any constants in it? Nothing is constant. Like everything is a variable. Everything can be changed. And when we started working on it, we thought that technically it wasn't possible. And actually, technically, it is possible because that's exactly what Regpak is. It's an application that has no constants in it. And then, as I was, we already had our second child and all that. And I was like, okay, this is like really fun playing with computers and all that. But now, let's see if we can actually do something with this, right? Like make money out of it.
And that was right out of school. Yeah. So right out of school, you went straight into kind of your own world, your own company, and starting. I think it was Xtag, right? Was Xtag like V1?
Yep.
And like what? Which is, I mean, look, you obviously have this massive experience with your skill set. I mean, you could have went out to school and worked for any large or medium-sized, tech firm. Like, what was it that made you want to do your own thing? Like, was there something that you remember that you're like, oh man, I'm not going to work for the other big guys?
You know what? I'll just quote my chief operation officer. He's like, he always tells me, like, working with you is trying to hold a bull in its place. It's like you're running so fast that you want to do so many things at the same time that it's really like riding a bull. And I don't think that can work in like corporate America.
Not in most
work, right?
How did you figure that out though? I mean,
and
was it something like in your mind, were you always going to go into like business for yourself? Like, or is it just like an inevitable conclusion? Did you ever try to go work at a company or internship or anything?
first of all, during my PhD, I worked for a lot of like different organizations and so forth because you need to fund yourself, right? That's one. But I think it's also something that came from my family because my father has multiple hotels and real estate, and he's like a businessman,
Yeah.
right? And it's something you grow up with where it's very obvious that you're supposed to have your own business.
Right.
It's like a given. It's like you can't not be at the top of the chain. That's just how it is. That's one. The second thing I think is also the passion to create something. I came out finishing my postdoc, actually, not only my PhD. I finished a postdoc, and then I was like, okay, I want to create something in the world. I want to do something. I really want people to use something that I create on a daily basis. I think that like if I wouldn't be a developer, I would be an architect because it's like it's usable art.
Right.
There's something about the fact that you create something and people use it every single day. I sometimes go into the statistics of our application and I see like, 100,000 people registered today in Regpak, or there are 10,500 administrators in the application right now. And I personally feel it's amazing. I created something in the world that thousands and thousands of people interact with, and it's part of their life. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's bold. It's really bold to think early on of wanting to do that and then actually going and doing it. I think a lot of people probably are listening and they they want to do that. They're like, yeah, I want to have something. What do you feel like? When you think about your kind of through line here of your different experiences, your dad's experience. What do you feel like gives you that, I guess, level of like vision or even maybe the feeling like I can do this, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I wish I could do that. I wish I could. Like, where does that come from? That like belief, like I said in the very opening too, of like, I'm going to create something. Like, do you have any idea where like that comes from for you?
That's a good question. I'm going to give you an answer that's a bit strange.
All right,
I think it's vanity.
Okay.
You need to be a little vain to say, I can do this, and go out and jump into the freezing water. And only when you're in the freezing water, you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here? But I'm in here already,
Exactly.
So I can't get out. So I need to swim. So I think a lot of times when you see people that do something that you're like, wow, that's amazing. And I see a lot of people where I look at them and I'm like, wow, it's amazing that he did that. Probably when they jumped in, they weren't aware that that's what they're getting into. Like today, I know what I got myself into.
Yeah, because you can look back.
I don't know if I knew that I would actually jump into the water, but that's part of what makes us human, I guess, right? That we don't have all the information, because if we did have all the information, we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think too, just like the idea that you just said, which is, you knew directionally what you wanted to jump into, and then you kind of have to. There is a little bit of that, whether it's ego or naivete or whatever, that you're like, I'll figure it out. Like it'll work out somehow. And then the funny part is too, it always does. Like maybe not when you want it to work out, maybe not as fast, but life is long. It's a lot longer than we think. And that, over time, if you're, continuing to put yourself in different situations, wherever that journey is supposed to lead, or where it's supposed to lead is where you will, you'll end up there, regardless of if you planned perfectly and then never jumped. So I think
I don't believe in fate, but I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And there's a really nice story about that. After I got my Fulbright scholarship, I needed to decide. Am I going, where am I going? And I applied to Harvard. I actually wanted to go to Harvard. And that's when I found, later, at the same time, I found my mentor from MIT. And I didn't get into Harvard. They told me, no, we don't have space in this specific program and blah, blah, blah. And then I got an email from my mentor to be my mentor in Berkeley. And I remember the conversation with Roger. I was like, Roger, I can't believe it. Like, I wanted to go to Harvard and be close to you because you're on MIT and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, this is a blessing in disguise and you have no idea how much this is going to change your life. And he was so right. If I would have gone to Harvard, I would have been a totally different person than who I am today. I would have met completely different people. I wouldn't have started my company at San Francisco. Like, my whole life would have been different. And something that at the time seemed like a disaster to me, today is one of the most important things that happened to me. The fact that I failed there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And again, it's just time, the score will be totaled up over time. And I think sometimes we can only see the next week or month or year. And I think, especially some of the things that we're going through right now, right, with the economy, et cetera. I think if you haven't been through it or you're nervous, time, it will all wash out. When there's really, really good times, there's going to be, times that aren't as good always. And I think for a lot of people right now, I think this is a really important mindset for a lot of people that are listening to this and think, oh, what's going to happen? It's like, it might not be great tomorrow or next month or next quarter, but as time has proven, it will get better. And so, or whatever better is, whatever the next iteration is, we will end up there. And so I think it's just a really solid lesson for people tuning in. And so you decide. So we kind of went down asking you about why you got into doing your own thing, and it makes a ton of sense to me. At what point did you realize like this is going to be my thing, right? Because a lot of times, like the first thing that you, like you said, you didn't have like a perfect idea of what Regpak was going to be, but you're like, okay, I'm going down the process. Like, was there a time where you remember, this is it? Like this is going to be my thing, to where I'm going to be able to get 10,000 users logged in at once. Etc. Like what was like kind of like the first sign for you of like, okay, this is going to be a thing?
First of all, I think the initial success of the interest that it spurred. Okay, for the way it started, like Regpak has a lot of educational institutions that work with us, and the reason is because the way it started is like I looked for a field that would need a software that is hyper flexible. Right. And I talked to my friends at the administration at Berkeley, and they showed me what they were doing. And I was like, oh, this is dumb. Like, there's a better way to do this. And that's basically what Regpak became. So the initial interest from the people that it was presented to, I think that's what told me, okay, I think this is it. I think this is going to be interesting.
Did you already know? I mean, was the payments piece in particular? Because you were kind of ahead of a lot of, obviously now there's, a lot of different players and different elements of the payments, world. And you all do more than just that. But like, how did you, like, I guess, like, was that part of that learning too, just from talking, like, this payments thing is really messed up? Like, what was it like about payments in particular that was like interesting for you?
I think there were two main things that were interesting to me in payments. And again, it's a lot of times it's connected to personal experience, right? So when we moved to the US, I had two small kids, and I wanted to send them to camp or to send them to all kinds of after school programs and so forth. And the first thing that I noticed is that we were asked for $3,000, $5,000 right up, like, pay up front. And the first thing we asked, because we were coming from a European country, is like, okay, can we pay in installments? And they actually looked at us in amazement, like, what are you talking about? And like, right. What do you mean what I'm talking about? That's basic. Like, who has, especially a PhD student, who has $5,000 just like, here, take it, right? And that's when I understood that there's an opportunity. And this is one of the main things that Regpak does. And we've seen that businesses that use this piece in Regpak grow by 30% per year. What they do is they offer people to pay in installments. And the software automatically takes the installments on a weekly, on a monthly, whatever they decide, right? Normally it's on a monthly basis. And this is different than using your credit card, in the sense that when you use your credit card, you pay the full $5,000, but then you don't pay the full amount when you submit payment. What you do, but now you're paying interest, right? So a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to pay the interest, but they don't have a choice. Now, the business is actually getting all the money when they don't actually need all the money right away, right? So it's a win-win situation. The business can offer installments, and the parents or never mind who's registering, like the students, the whatever, are paying in installments up to the point where the business actually needs the money. So you're creating a situation where both sides are getting the money at the exact time that they need it. Nobody's paying interest. The business can sell more because more people can now register and pay. People that beforehand wouldn't be able to do that. And that was the point. And it's really funny how always it's personal experience that creates that understanding of, hey, this can be done differently. And that was the point that I understood that payments is really important in this specific space. We've actually grown to like much bigger spaces now, client billing and SaaS software and all that. But that's still the part of Regpak that people love the most.
No, I can imagine. Yeah. And I think it's just in today's world, we just expect to do things the way that we want to do them, right? Versus, I think for a long time, companies could kind of tell us how to buy. They could tell us, and now it's the companies that are winning. Even sometimes, we see from a convenience, like the products that are most convenient and easiest, they might even win over a superior product. I always tell this story. It's like, how many of you have been on Amazon and something was going to get there in 4 days, and then a similar thing is going to get there tomorrow, and you're like, forget it, I'll just do the one tomorrow. And when people out there, if you're running a business, you're listening to this, our ability to have options to meet buyers where they are, and not just in B2C, but in B2B, it's the same thing. B2B is just very linear, and you have to go through a process. But we're seeing big changes where people are just realizing, wow, we've got to have different paths for people. Like the software rep hit me up. We've got a bunch of free users apparently, or some people are paying, and he's like, let's hop on a call. And it's like, no, dude, I don't want to hop on a call. Just tell me what the cost is. Tell me why this is going to help my team. And I think, what you're doing is giving people that flexibility to buy how they want, meeting that customer where they are. And I just feel like as we go forward, that is going to be the name of the game. Like, do you have a customized enough offering for customers to where they can do it the way that they want to do it? Versus, how we want to do it, which would be a lot easier if we could just, have one size fits all. So I want to ask you a couple questions, like as you're founding the company, right? So you start this in school, you see this clear pain, and obviously now the company's doing really well. What were some big moments, for you? One of the things you and I were talking a little bit about is, you're running hard at this. You went from running hard at school to running hard doing your own company. You've got 2 kids. What was the point? I know that you talk a lot about self-care and meditation and how important these things are for you. Like, when did that really resonate? What was the timing for you where like, okay, I've got to start to realize that running hard is great, but I got to take care of the engine as well too?
I think that you described it very well. Like I was running for many, many years, like from I would say age of 25. Okay, just running really, really fast. And at some point, you start to feel sort of disconnected from yourself, and the questions come up of like, what is this all for, right? Like, why am I doing this? But you push them down, right? You don't want to ask the question because you're like, okay, I'm not going to deal with this question because it's too big, and I'm going to get depressed, and I don't want to do that. But then for me, I had a wake up call. We had a problem in the company where we lost some information. It was leaking out, and as I realized that was happening, I found myself on the floor in a fetal position, in a super panic attack for 30 minutes, and I was sure like I was gonna die because I felt like everything that I built is gonna be destroyed. Obviously, the reality is very different than what you feel at that moment, but that's how I felt. And I threw up, the whole super panic attack thing, right? And then I went to the doctor, to the normal doctor, right? To ask her, like, hey, like, this is happening because it continued. It didn't like happen once and that's it. Every single day, it would happen twice or three times. Later, I found out, sadly, that once you start having panic attacks, that's going to happen to you for life, most likely.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucks. Anyway, went to the doctor and she was like, "Oh yeah, let's put you on Prozac or something." I was like, "No, I don't think that's a good solution because basically, if I pushed it down my whole life, what is this all for? So now you're going to give me chemicals to push it down, which is not exactly what I want to do." And I went to a therapist that I once went to her for a very specific problem. She helped me, and I called her, and her name is Ricky. She's still my therapist to this day. And I told her, like, look, this is happening, and the doctor wants to put me on Prozac. And she was like, you know what? Let's wait for 1 week, 2 weeks. Let's talk a bit and see if this could be solved. And she introduced me to the whole idea of the leaking bucket, and that it's your job to make sure that the bucket is half full. The idea of the leaking bucket is that when we run so fast and when we don't stop and we push down the questions all the time, what's happening is that our bucket starts filling up. And it fills more and it fills more. At some point, it's leaking. And once it's leaking, we suffer really, really bad because these things that we're trying to push down, they come out because there's so many of them already. And if we don't stop and learn to basically stop thinking and to just feel our body and to understand that the most important person in all of this is me, then it's not gonna end well. And I try to do what she told me. It didn't work so well in the beginning, in the first 3 months, to the point that I was overworking myself, to the point that I burned out. I burned out. I was in bed for a week. I couldn't raise my head. It was really bad. And I remember, like, my little kid coming to me and telling me, "Dad, is this it? Like, you're never going to get up?" And that's when I understood that, okay, this has to stop. This has to stop. I need to start taking care of myself. And then, like, I really got into this. Like, I meditate every day. I swim every day. I work out. I have at least 1 or 2 hours that I play an instrument. I make sure that on the weekends I'm only with my kids. And oddly enough, I'm more productive today and I get more done than when I was like super busy, running after my own tail, taking care of a million things at the same time. Because what happens is that when I'm sitting down to work, and I work a lot of hours, I work like 8, 10, 12 hours sometimes a day, right? But I'm just working. I'm super focused. I'm in the zone. And because I'm so connected to myself now, when I feel that I'm outside of the zone or I can't continue to do really good work, I get up and I go do something else. I go to a restaurant with a friend. I go swim. There's no need to try to fight it because that's it. You're done. And if I'll sit 3 more hours, I'm going to do what tomorrow I'll do in 10 minutes.
Right. That's such a good lesson. Where do you, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening now are, wow, this is like, that makes a ton of sense. How did you, like, I guess, like, what was the conversation like with yourself to get you there? Was it, again, like, obviously, your child coming up and saying to you can be kind of a bit of a wake up call, but how did you, because I have to imagine, at least for a little bit, there's that like discomfort around like, am I doing the right thing? Like, if I take my foot off the gas, like, is this gonna, and I'm sure a lot of people go through this, like, how did you start to build that habit? I think I'm really curious about that for myself, myself as well, of like, how did you really start to build that habit and that belief in, again, like working the way that's smart for you. And that doesn't mean, having to work, 15 hours a day It could be 8 hours this day, 10 hours that day, whatever is required. Like, what were some of like the, I guess maybe the early trial and errors that you had to like get to this like very, like you said, grounded like place that you're in right now?
I think the first thing is to understand that everything is your life. People tend to disconnect their work from their life, right? They think like, okay, this is my work, and now I finished working. Now I'm going to have fun. I'm going to live my life. But no, everything is your life. The time that you swim, the time that you play, the time that you work, the time that you think, the time that you plan, that's all your life. There's no disconnect. There's no areas. It's all blended, right? So once you start thinking like that, then you understand, okay, if everything is my life, then it's fine for me to swim 2 hours a day. It's fine for me that today, because I'm in the zone, I'm not going to do those things. It's fine for it not to be like very rigid because everything is your life. That's the first thing that really helps me because and then you never have the, I know that a lot of people have this sort of like guilt feelings.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I have a guilt feeling because I was at the pool for 2 hours today. No, it doesn't matter because everything is your life. Okay, it's not like, and then if you were 2 hours at the pool and now in 4 hours you did what normally you would do in 8 hours, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Right? And then after those 4 hours, once you're done doing what you planned for the day, get up and go play soccer.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think that was the first really like realization. And the second one was that it's never going to be enough.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that it's never going to be enough means that you can only do your best. Okay? So if tomorrow morning I go and I buy a Porsche, I'll be like, okay, why didn't I buy a Ferrari? So it doesn't matter.
That's right.
So it really does not matter.
Yeah, the work never stops. Yeah.
It never stops. It never stops. No, it doesn't. Like, I sit down with my team and we go over the numbers, and this is just the person I am, right? We had an amazing month. Okay. We grew by 100%. And I'm like, okay, how do we replicate this and do 150% next month? And they're like, how? Like, what's wrong with you? We're like, no, we're not celebrating now. We need to learn how to make this happen next month twice as good. And then you understand, like, you can do that, but you need to disconnect that from who you are. It's hard to explain. It's like, let's say this month we grew 100%. It doesn't mean I'm a better person. And let's say next month we actually declined by 10%. It doesn't mean that I'm not a good person. My self-worth and who I am is connected to me. And the business or what I'm doing is connected to that.
I love that, man. I love it. I'm just jotting down some of these little nuggets here. So when I go back and listen, there's just so much good here. And this actually leads really, really well to the next topic I wanted to talk a little bit about, which is, we were talking early about before the show started on working hard versus working smart and, getting more accomplished. And you're talking about that a little bit, but I wonder if we can go a little deeper there for people. I see this even in my own company that, one of our 4 core values is actually work smart, and it's on purpose. It's not work hard, because I feel like sometimes we just get so working hard is gritting it out, right? I'm just, and a lot of people can work hard, right? I can check a lot of boxes in a day. I can answer, all my emails. I can do X, I can do Y, but are we actually doing the work? Are we actually like moving the needle versus, all these little things that might feel like they're like micro moving the needle, but may or may not be actually like what's the most important thing that I should be doing. And so for you, like, talk a little bit about that philosophy for you. We were talking before, and I know that that's something, this idea of like being smart with how you work and your time versus just checking a lot of boxes is something that you've really spent a lot of time on.
I think the best way of thinking of it, instead of working hard, is like the difference between being busy and actually working. Okay, so when you're busy, a lot of times you're just like doing. You're in doing mode, right? But you're not necessarily stopping and thinking, are these the things that I should be doing? Are these the things that are, like you said, like are going to move the needle? And I find it, first of all, it's connected to what I talked about before, right? Being busy doesn't help. Okay, so like I'm sure everybody's going to relate to this. You know the point where you're in your emails and you're just scrolling up and down and you're not doing anything. You're just looking at which email you want to answer because you're totally burned out. Your brain is not functioning anymore. And you're just scrolling up and down and you're just going into emails and you're not really answering them. Don't. Get up. You're done. You're done. Okay, you're just being busy now, right? You're done for that day. You can't do any more that day. That's fine. Okay, so then when you actually are sitting down and doing the work, and this is something that I work with my team all the time, okay, we set criteria of what are things that are important to us. Because in a software company, you have a million requests. People are coming in with feature ideas all the time and saying, okay, we want you to do this and we want you to build that. And of course, you have the clients that are like, if this doesn't exist, then we're leaving or whatever, right? And then what really helped my company understand how to function are two technologies that I introduced into the company. One is the tier-based structure of clients. Okay, so clients are put automatically into tier levels on basically how much they earn for the company, right? And based on their tier level, we determine how important they are for us as a company. Now, this really helped quieten the noise. Because suddenly you saw a lot of noise are coming. We have like from tier 1 to tier 6. A lot of noise are coming from the tier 6 clients, right? They're making so much noise, but when you look at them, they're basically generating something like 5% of the revenue of the company. Okay? So it really helps you understand, okay, what should I be listening to? That's one. The second thing is, okay, once you've understood what you should be listening to, you still have too much to do. At this point, what we do is we put in a criteria. We say, what's going to make the most impact on how many clients are going to be impacted by this change or by this new feature? Are we going to work less once this feature happens, or will it bring us more clients? So those are the 4 criteria. And if something hits 4 criteria, we run on it like crazy. If it hits 3, less. If it hits only 1, it's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Now, what this really puts you in focus on how do I make my company grow? Because at the end, moving the needle is making your company grow, right? So it really focuses you on how you're going to grow your company. Now, it took me about, I think, between 6 to 8 months to get all the company to talk in these terms, because I was like constantly talking about it. What are the criteria? What tier is the client? Every single situation that people would bring to me, I'd be, what tier is the client? What tier is the client? Tier 6? I don't care. Don't talk to me about them. Just don't. No, but I don't want to listen. I don't care. I don't care. What tier is it? A tier 1? Yes, please. Explain to me what is the problem. Okay? And then the third thing that we do is we do not come to people with solutions. We only come to people with problems. Okay? A lot of times someone has a problem, and they figure out the solution in their mind. Okay? And they come in at, guns blazing, I need this and this and this and this and this. And you're like, okay, fine. Now, in a company that doesn't ask questions, everybody goes running around trying to get whatever this person asked for, right? They get what the person asked for, they give it to them, and it doesn't solve the problem. Obviously, because they didn't think about it on how to solve the problem. They just wanted the solution that they came up with. So what we always do in Regpak is that when someone comes up with a solution or a feature request, we're like, stop. What's the problem? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Because we found that 90% of the time, the solution that they come up with is the wrong solution.
That's right. It's like in the ballpark, right? It's like, but if
it's like in the area, but
that's right. That's what I've found in my life. That's what great product people, I've been very blessed, for my career as a sales leader to work with great product people. And that's exactly the mindset. It's like, don't tell me, and like whenever we do operations consulting for organizations, revenue operations consulting. And it's like, it's so crazy how many organizations run with a bunch of solutions. It's like, no, don't tell me. I need a dashboard with, no. What are you trying to accomplish? What's the problem? Okay, great. Now you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go solve it this way. And it's actually going to solve like 18 things. It's like, oh, wow. Like I never thought of that. I love that idea. How do you balance that real quick? Like, how do you balance that with, there's kind of the other mindset too, which is like, don't bring someone a problem without a solution to it. That's definitely like a saying I've heard before. How do you balance those two things where you also want someone to, think through the problem more, I guess? I don't know. I guess, yeah. Like, how do you think about those two things together? About, you do want, maybe people thinking a little bit about potential solutions, but I guess, in your mindset, it's like, no, don't let other people help you figure out what the solution is, period.
No, I think, first of all, Regpak is a company that really empowers all our employees to come up with solutions and solve problems. Okay? It's like, it's a known thing. Like, you come with a problem to one of your managers, and most of the times the answer will be figure it out, find a solution, right? But the thing is that once you come up with a solution that demands a lot of resources in order to implement it, then at that point, stop. Let's brainstorm about this. Maybe your solution is perfect, okay? Maybe your solution is perfect, but let's stop, let's think about it, and let's think what works best. Also, remember that this specific mindset that I talked about is really good when the amount of the pressure to create and to do specific things is really hard. Like, a lot of ideas are coming in, a lot of demands, a lot of requests, and then it's very easy to look and understand how to solve the problem. Once you understand the problem, and out of like 10 solutions that come up, suddenly it becomes 2. You understand?
Yeah, 100%.
So it really depends. You need to use the right tool for the right situation. A lot of times people, also one of the things that we do at Regpak is that when someone comes up with a solution, which is fine, okay, explain to me the problem, okay? Now explain to me, how did you reach the conclusion that this is the solution? What's the data that you used, and how did you gather the data? Like, remember, I'm a Ph.D., right? This is what I do. I do research, right? So I'm like, okay, what's the data? How did you gather the data? How did you manipulate it? And now explain to me why this is the solution. So it needs to be very, very grounded in logic and in science.
I love that. Yeah, and I say, if I call it like layer 2. If I can't ask 2 layers of questions, okay, great. Tell me how you came up. Well, this. Okay, and then what, again, what evidence or like what research? If an idea can't pass the level 2, like I call it, like, it's like I think of it like a wet paper bag. It's like, if I can go like this and it punches straight through the concept, it's like, you probably just need to go back and again rethink what the problem is. Is that, or to your point, is that the problem that we should be solving? Based on like these criteria. And I love this idea of having a really simple, like 4 things that, that everyone can run any of their idea filters by to say, is this something we should pursue? Again, less work, bring new clients, impact on customer. Like, I just think that there's so much in there we try to make business so complicated at times. But if you as an organization, or you're working, even if you're working in a department, you could come up with that. I could just see a lot of power there. And the ability to really, like simplify the way that you think about taking on projects. So this is great, man. So we're almost at our time here. And so I'm going to ask you kind of a question that I ask everyone. There's been a ton here. I've got like a page and a half of notes, by the way. What's next? Like, when you think about like, what gets you excited for like the next, the next big leap? What are the things that as you're looking at your business and what you're doing, or it could be personal, like what has you excited, for the next like year or two?
Okay, so I think Regpak is at the point where it can become what I envisioned it to become. Regpak is in a point. I always say this to people that want to really understand what Regpak is easily. It's Shopify for services. Okay, it's like services work in a very different way than like just like products. They have onboarding processes. It's very different. So Regpak is Shopify for services. And from what I hope to see in the next 2 years is that Regpak will become the onboarding platform that services use when they're onboarding their clients and charging them and billing them and so forth. And sometimes it's a little bit amazing to me that in basically 2023, still you can see that it's so disjointed, the way that services work and which softwares they use, because and there is a reason, right? It's a very complicated problem because every service and every business onboards their clients very differently. Okay, because that's the base of the business, the onboarding process. That's how they become a client. And there was never a software that was able to do exactly that for all types of businesses. And Regpak can do that because the extreme technology that stands behind it, where it allows everything to be a variable. So we're seeing that more and more businesses that are service-based understand that they need to up their game. And maybe this downturn actually is a blessing in disguise. And will cause a lot of these businesses to do that. And that's where I see Regpak in the next 2 years, to become the Shopify of service.
I love it. Well, look, there's a lot. I mean, getting into this, I knew we were going to talk a lot about some of these topics, but man, everything is your life. I have this written down. I even have like a little star by it. I just feel like there's so much very practical, because that's what I love. Philosophy is one thing, but I think a lot of the examples you gave, hopefully for everyone listening, are also very tactical, meaning things that you could take one step forward, really think about, to yourself of like that leaking bucket, just, sitting with yourself, thinking through what's causing that. And, understanding this idea of like truly like, you're living in what people would call an integrated life, right? Which is, there is only one life, these things are already integrated, whether you want to, compartmentalize them as much as you want, like it is one life. And I just have to say, I really enjoyed the conversation, man.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun.
Good. I think again, I think the listeners are going to have a ton of takeaways. So thank you for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And everyone, we will see you next week on the Jake Dunlap Show. Thank you everyone again for listening to another episode. If you are listening all the way to the end, I hope you have left a review. I hope that you make sure that you're following or subscribing on your favorite podcast listening apparatus. We'll be back next Thursday. And again, make sure to check out the Monday episodes as well too. A lot of people are really enjoying these kind of mini episode Mondays. So make sure to tune in, subscribe, and leave a review.